Cozy Apologia by the African-American poet and essayist Rita Dove first appeared in the magazine Poetry in 2003, and then in her 2004 collection American Smooth. The poem is autobiographical in nature, being as it is, dedicated to her husband, the German-born writer Fred Webern, whom she married in 1979, and to the love that she feels for him. Set against the backdrop of Hurricane Floyd, which struck the Bahamas and the east coast of the United States in the September of 1999, and which triggered the fourth largest evacuation in US history, when 2.6 million people were ordered to leave their homes, she uses the poem to defend the warm and comforting ordinariness of her relationship with her husband, and its worthiness to be the subject of a love poem. The poem comprises 3 stanzas of 10 lines each. There is no fixed metrical structure, and line lengths vary freely between 6 and 14 syllables, although there are a couple of examples of lines of regular iambic pentameter, di-dum, 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 and regular iambic tetrameter, di-dum, 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 di-dum. The poet modulates the rhythm through extensive use of end-stopping, enjambment, and caesura that also allowed the rhyme to fade into the background, to become a subtle unifying device. While there is no fixed rhyme scheme that is maintained throughout, the poem does feature masculine or single end rhyme, which follows a regular A, B, C, C, etc. structure, e.g. you and blue and page and age, as far as the 4th line of the 2nd stanza, when this breaks down as Dove begins to reminisce and daydream about her teenage crushes. A more regular rhyme scheme, featuring predominantly alternate A, B rhyme, e.g. news, do, blues and you, is resumed in the 3rd stanza. Internal, weak or unaccented rhyme, e.g. glinting and smiling, and sound patterning techniques such as assonance and sibilance also give the poem a sense of cohesion and musicality, and serve to enhance the ideas Dove is communicating. The title, Cozy Apologia, is a straightforward one in that it explicitly sets out what the poem is to be about from the start. To be cosy, or cosy with an S in British English spelling, is to experience an intimate sense of warmth, comfort and relaxation. And an apologia is a formal written defence of either one's opinions or one's conduct. In other words, Dove is telling the reader that she will set out her justification for the comfortable and intimate ordinariness of her love for her husband, and its worthiness to be the subject of a poem in the lines that follow. Note the way in which the long O and E vowel sounds in cozy are picked up in the middle of apologia to create a feeling of harmony and warmth. The poem begins with Dove addressing her husband directly as she makes the sweeping assertion that I could pick anything and think of you. The modal verb could, used to communicate possibility, and the pronoun anything, suggests that the way in which she sees the world, and everything in it, is irrevocably bound to him. The list of examples which follows, introduced by the dash at the end of the 1st line, firmly places her in an identifiable physical context. She is sitting at her desk, writing this poem, as the storm, still in its early stages, quietly begins outside. Note that her choice of an asyndetic list, where the and introducing its final item is missing, suggests its infinite nature. This lamp, the wind still rain, the glossy blue my pen exudes, drying matte upon the page. The way she uses the demonstrative adjective this to refer to the proximity of the lamp seems to be proof of her assertion, as it suggests that it is the very first thing she sets her eyes on as she gazes randomly at her immediate surroundings. The reference to the wind-still rain outside her window suggests its quietness in a period of calm before the storm. The glossy blue exuded by her pen evokes the liquid ink from the nib of a fountain pen, which dries matte or non-shiny upon the page, as she writes the very lines we are reading. Note how the enjambment here creates a forward-moving feel, enhanced by the assonance of exudes that picks up the long ooh sounds of you and blue, which perhaps evokes the way in which these lines, as well as the ink in her pen, flow freely as her husband's constant presence in her thoughts inspires her to write. She concludes the stanza with another bold assertion that I could choose any hero, any cause or age, and sure as shooting arrows to the heart, astride a dappled mare, legs braced as far apart as standing in silver stirrups will allow, there you'll be, with furrowed brow and chain mail glinting, to set me free, one eye smiling, the other firm upon the enemy. There's an abundance of romantic imagery here as we shift away from the mundanity of her physical surroundings, in which her husband is omnipresent, to the world of her imagination where he holds equal power. For her, he is the archetypal hero of any cause or age. To use the age-old trope, he is her medieval knight in shining armour, or glinting chainmail, who arrives on horseback astride a dappled mare to set her, the damsel in distress, free. Note how she also alludes to the myth of Cupid, who, shooting a golden-tipped arrow, would fill the female heart where it landed with love for a certain male for ever, in her simile, sure as shooting arrows to the heart, there you'll be, to evoke her husband's dependability. She also alludes to his strength, legs braced as far apart as standing in silver stirrups will allow, although she makes sure to grant him a more three-dimensional and human side as she describes his furrowed brow, revealing concern and concentration, and his smiling eye, revealing love and warmth, even as the other remains firmly fixed upon the enemy. The second stanza returns abruptly to the current time, as almost with a click of her fingers, the romantic legend vanishes to be replaced with this post-postmodern age. Each age can be seen as a reaction against or a departure from the values and beliefs of the one preceding it. First, there was modernism in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. As a reaction against this, postmodernism was born in the mid-20th century after the Second World War. In its turn, post-postmodernism, which developed at the end of the 20th century, can be seen as a reaction against postmodernism. There have been few formal efforts to actually define what post-postmodernism consists of, but it is enough for us to understand that for Dove it is all business and no romance, full of compact discs and faxes, a do-it-now and take-no-risks event. She just as quickly dismisses it, as her mind wanders and she turns her attention onto the fact that today a hurricane is nudging up the coast. The verb nudging up suggests the way it is progressing slowly but inexorably towards her. It is oddly male, Big Bad Floyd. Hurricanes and tropical storms are named in order to simplify messaging and communications. Each year, the National Hurricane Center in the United States starts at A and alternates between female and male names. So far in 1999, there had been Tropical Storm Arlene, Hurricane Brett, Hurricane Cindy, Hurricane Dennis, Tropical Storm Emily, and then Hurricane Floyd. Note how Dove refers to the naming of this hurricane and its personification as oddly male, which leads her to dub him Big Bad Floyd, in an apparent reference to the 1961 pop song Big Bad John, about a miner who, although a killer himself, sacrificed his life to save 20 miners when the mine they were working in collapsed. presumably due to the fact that the hurricane forces her to stay inside and halt all normal activity, and because her nickname for it takes her back to her younger years when the song Big Bad John was popular. Floyd brings a host of daydreams, awkward reminiscences of teenage crushes on worthless boys whose only talent was to kiss you senseless. This type of transient or fleeting love, exclusively physical and passionate as she was kissed senseless, is implicitly compared unfavourably with the abiding love she has found with her husband, as she describes these boys as worthless. Note how the rhyme scheme breaks down here as reminiscences imperfectly rhymes with senseless 2 lines later, and boys remains rhymeless until it also imperfectly and somewhat belatedly rhymes with Floyd's at the end of the final line of the stanza. This awkwardness in the poem's form perhaps reflects the awkwardness that she professes to feel as she reflects on these encounters with worthless boys, whose only talent was to kiss you senseless. Although the soft sound in these lines caused by the extensive sibilance seems somewhat at odds with an interpretation that these memories are entirely negative. In contrast to the strong and heroic figure that she has already painted of her husband, they all had sissy or girly names, such as Marcel, Percy, Dewey, and were as thin as licorice and as chewy, sweet with a dark and hollow centre. The one instance of double or feminine rhyme in the poem, Dewey and Chewy, is designed to be humorous and suggests the way in which she is able to dismiss the memory of these boys with a smile. The simile comparing them to a stick of licorice is also affectionately dismissive, bringing to mind thin and gangly teenagers who, although sweet, were essentially hollow. A meaningless and short-lived pleasure, the antithesis of what she has with her husband. Note how the third stanza effectively starts at the end of the second stanza, as the final line is enjambed across the stanza break. Floyd's cussing up a storm. As Dove seems to be abruptly brought out of her daydreams of the past to the here and now, to focus on the increasing power of Hurricane Floyd. Note how she continues to personify it, describing the noise of the wind and rain as cussing or swearing. She and her husband, however, are cosily protected in their respective workspaces. She addresses him directly once more. You're bunkered in your eyrie, I'm perched in mine. An eyrie, or eyrie in its more common spelling, is another word for an eagle's nest, often used for a place which is high up with commanding views, suggesting that their office space is at the top of the house. It's not made of twigs and leaves, however, but the much more humdrum and domesticated twin desks, computers, hardwood floors. We're content, she asserts, but fall short of the divine. They're happy and satisfied with their lot, but she refuses to get carried away by waxing lyrical about it being perfect and heavenly. Still, she says, it's embarrassing, this happiness. Now we seem to be getting to the heart of the poem and the reason that she feels she needs to defend herself. It's embarrassing, perhaps, that she is not a tortured soul who has been wounded by an unrequited or doomed love, or a giddy lover overwhelmed by passion. She uses rhetorical questions to explore the common notion, perhaps, that only the extraordinary is ever worth writing about, because that is all that people are interested in. Who's satisfied simply with what's good for us? When has the ordinary ever been news? She's cheerfully resigned to this, however, because he is the key to staving off the wistful gloominess that perhaps the storm outside is threatening to provoke in her. And yet, because nothing else will do to keep me from melancholy, call it blues, I fill this stolen time with you. It's interesting to note how she characterises this enforced period of being shut up at home as stolen time, as though she perhaps feels she doesn't get enough of an opportunity to daydream in her otherwise busy life. Note also how the poem ends on a line of iambic tetrameter. Di-dum, 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 di-dum. I fill this stolen time with you. the regularity of the meter, perhaps suggesting the comfort that daydreaming about her husband gives her. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques, and English literature texts.